This guy was mistakenly summoned into this world and granted a powerful skill that makes every girl fall for him. The anime began with a 40-year-old guy who was accidentally summoned to another world by a summoning spell. Instead of meeting the summoner, he encountered a goddess named Nolan. She apologized and explained that he had been unintentionally caught up in a summoning meant for someone else. Nolan was furious at the summoner for using the forbidden summoning spell, which is extremely dangerous. She explained that the laws of this world and Earth are vastly different, and the spell risked causing this world to collapse. When she detected the spell being activated, she tried to intervene. Although she couldn't stop it, she managed to redirect him to her location. As for the proper target of the spell, they were safely summoned to the place where the spell was activated, the Holy Sidonia Empire. When the man asked the goddess to send him back if his summoning was a mistake, Nolan admitted she couldn't, since she had already taken measures to prevent the summoning spell from ever being used again. She explained that even if she wanted to send him back, he no longer had a body to return to. She suggested he start a new life in this world instead. With no other options, the man reluctantly agreed and asked if that meant he would be sent to the Holy Sidonia Empire. The goddess shook her head, saying the empire was far too dangerous, especially since he was summoned by accident. If he were discovered there, his treatment would be harsh. Instead, she decided to send him to a different nation, granting him her blessing along with several useful skill to aid him on his journey. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to see how handsome his new face was. Excited, he checked his status and began experimenting with his magic. While wandering through the forest in search of a village, he found a sturdy piece of wood and used his skill to craft it into a spear. By using his appraisal skill, he is able to identify useful materials in the area and stored them in his infinite storage, a skill he received from the goddess's blessing. Just then, he sees a child running away from the ribbit monster and calls out to him for help. Despite being scared, he manages to defeat the monster with a single slash. His status screen appears, showing that he has been promoted to the warrior job. The child informs him that there is a nearby village, and he asks her to guide him there. As for the monster's corpse, he stores it in his infinite storage, but realizes he has accidentally revealed his blessing skill to the child. Upon reaching the village, the man introduces himself as Takumi to the child's parents, who are deeply grateful for saving their daughter. Takumi then asks if he can stay in the village for a while. They smile and agree, but since the village has no inn, they decide to build him a house. While the villagers gather to help, Takumi attempts to use magic to level the ground. However, the effort leaves him with a headache as he has no mana left. Everyone is shocked to see that he can actually use magic and insists that he rest while they handle the rest. Meanwhile, in the Holy Sidonia Empire, 3 summoned individuals are greeted by a woman named Elizabeth, the first Empress of the Empire. She explains that they were summoned to this world because she needs their powers as heroes to save it. Just then, Akane, one of the summoned individuals, receives a blessing skill called Revelation from the goddess Nolan. The skill tells her not to trust Elizabeth. The next day, Takumi checks his status and successfully changes his job from warrior to blacksmith. With this new role, he can transform the ore he mines into iron ingots. Excited by his progress, he spends the entire day working on it. When the child visits him, she is shocked to find him completely drained of energy. Later, her mother gives him a mana potion and scolds him for overworking himself. As time passes, Takumi becomes skilled in blacksmithing, reaching level 40 in the job. However, he feels dissatisfied because his true ambition is to become an alchemist, not a blacksmith. One day, he asks the child's father if he has any potions he can spare. The father agrees to give him some on the condition that Takumi sells some of the potions he makes back to him. Takumi gladly accepts the deal. After crafting the potions, Takumi notices something unusual. The color of his potion is different from normal ones. Later, he eats a poisonous plant and then uses Cure Purification spell on himself, believing this method will help him quickly build resistance and improve his purification magic level. Just then, a level 25 boar suddenly appears and spots him. As the boar charges toward him, Takumi grabs his spear and tries to stab it, but the spear breaks. He then tried to use his magic to attack, but it has no effect. Terrified and unsure of what to do, he notices a level 19 wound spider nearby. When the boar charges at him again, the spider unexpectedly leaps onto the boar's face, protecting Takumi. Takumi is unsure of what's happening. As he thinks there is no way to the boar, he suddenly has an idea. By using his alchemy skill, Decompose, he manages to take down the boar. Grateful for the spider's help, he approaches it and thanks it for protecting him before using his skill to heal it. To his surprise, his status screen suddenly pops up, showing that he has unlocked the Tame skill. Shocked but excited, Takumi decides to make the spider his pet and names it Maple. This Maple evolves and regrows its missing legs. Back in the village, everyone is astonished that Takumi managed to defeat the boar on his own and even tamed a spider, an incredible feat since insect monsters are thought to be untamable. The villagers then celebrate with a feast, enjoying the boar's meat together. During this, Takumi asks the villagers about the nearest big city, and they tell him it's Bolton. While they feel the village has become brighter thanks to him, they are saddened by the thought of his departure. Still, they understand he isn't the type to remain in a small village forever. Meanwhile, the goddess Nolan observes Takumi's every move. Another goddess then approaches her, curious about her plans for Takumi. She points out that Nolan not only granted him a special body and her blessing, but also sent him 1 full year into the past, before the Holy Sidonia Empire activated their summoning spell. Nolan smiles and saying there's no particular meaning to it. The next day, Takumi wakes up, surprised to find himself wrapped in spider silk by Maple. He realizes it's because he hasn't spent time playing with her, as he's been too focused on making potions. Feeling guilty, Takumi apologizes and promises to play with her, which makes Maple happy. Just then, Martha walks in and misunderstands the situation. After Takumi explains everything, Martha examines the spider silk and smiles mischievously. Later, Maple and Martha work together and they manage to make a cloth out of silk. When Takumi reminds Maple about spending time with him, Maple ignores him, saying she is busy right now. Takumi has been wanting to head to the city and study alchemy there. However, he finds it hard to break the news to the villagers. Afterward, he got custom armor made by the blacksmith and learned that both the blacksmith and Banga already knew about his plan to move to the city, Bolton. They had even arranged for him to ride on a carriage, as it just so happened that a trader from Bolton is coming to the village next week. Takumi is touched by this and thanks them. As he walks back home, he meets Martha and asks what she's carrying. She explains that it's the innards of a horned rabbit her husband hunted, and she plans to throw them away since the meat needs to be properly processed to remove diseases and parasites, something she can't do here. Takumi tells her there's no need to throw it away and uses his purification skill on it, making it safe to eat. This surprises Martha. Noticing that he can use light magic, Martha warns him not to use it in front of just anyone, as only a few people can use light magic. It's rare enough that those with enough skill can make a living from it. Before the trader arrives, Takumi spends his days improving the village, building a wall around it to make it as safe as possible. When the trader, named Papek, arrives, he is surprised by how developed the village is. Banga then introduces Takumi to him. As they talk, Takumi suddenly gives Banga a healing potion, mentioning that he had 100 of them delivered to Banga's house in case anything goes wrong. Papek, noticing the potion, immediately becomes interested and starts examining it. Just then, the villagers gather to say goodbye to him and give him a coat as a gift. Takumi feels grateful and thanks them for everything they've done for him. Seeing this, a man named Heath is deeply moved and begins to cry before introducing himself to Takumi. The person next to him is named Ryle, and the man next to Takumi is Bogar. It turns out that the three of them are part of a rank sea adventuring party called Lionfang. They were hired to be bodyguards for Papek. Takumi then introduces his spider, Maple, to them. They are surprised and find it fascinating. Ryle grins creepily and tries to touch Maple, only to get knocked out by her instead. Maple then crawls onto Bogar and seems to like him, which makes Ryle jealous. Just then, Papek asks Takumi if he's willing to sell his healing potions to him. Takumi agrees, saying he doesn't mind. As they continue talking, a group of goblins suddenly appears, blocking the road. Ryle, Heath, and Bogar then step out of the carriage and swiftly eliminate all the goblins. After arriving at the city of Bolton, Takumi immediately headed for the Adventurers Guild to register both himself and Maple, his pet. As part of the process to stay in the city, Takumi wanted to register with an Alchemist's Guild. However, since there isn't one in this city, he had to register with the Adventurers Guild to use the guild card as their identification. The guild receptionist explained to him that if he stayed at the lowest rank, his registration wouldn't expire as long as he accepted a simple quest once a month. Later, at the Papek company, Takumi is shocked when Papek offers him a huge sum of money to purchase his potions. Although Takumi suspects that Papek might have an ulterior motive, he doesn't seem like the type to deceive others. While Takumi is deep in thought, Papek asks about his current residence. He suggests that if Takumi plans to establish himself as a producer, it would be wise to live in a home with a workshop. Takumi quickly responds that such a place would be too expensive and that he doesn't have much money at the moment. Hearing this, Papek proposes another solution and asks one of his men to show Takumi some places he can rent instead. Little did he know, the man was actually recommending a large mansion for rent. Takumi initially thought he couldn't afford it and asked the man to show him another place. However, when he learned the rental price, he was surprised to find it cheap. With the money he had earned from selling his potions earlier, he realized he could afford the rent. Relieved, Takumi decided to take it. As they walked around the city, Takumi asked the man about the unpleasant smell in the air. The man explained that it was the smell of sewage. Nobles use magical purifying devices to treat the sewage in their mansions, but since these devices must be excavated from dungeons or ancient ruins, they are too expensive for use in the city's sewers. Instead, the city hires priests to purify the sewage periodically. The next day, Takumi and Maple moved into their new home, and the first thing he did was spend the rest of the day building his own toilet. Just then, he heard a scream nearby, and when he rushed to check, he was shocked to see Papek wrapped in spider silk by Maple. Maple told Takumi that she had done this to entertain him, and surprisingly, it was true. Papek was actually enjoying it. After apologizing to Papek, the man suddenly mentioned needing to use the restroom. When he went in, he was taken aback and immediately asked what it was. Takumi explained that it was a toilet, and he had attached a magical device to it. Takumi then explained how the toilet worked. After finishing their business, the device used purification to break down waste into clean water and a small amount of inorganic material. Hearing the word purification, Papek asked Takumi if he could use light magic. Takumi suddenly remembered Martha's warning not to show his light magic to just anyone. He regretted his decision and asked Papek to keep it a secret, which Papek agreed to. Papek then pointed to the toilet and asked Takumi to make 100 more. Feeling the pressure, Takumi agreed. Papek then looked around and suggested that Takumi should get a slave to serve as his protection and manage the mansion. He then added that with a slave serving him, he wouldn't have to worry about them betraying him and leaking information about how he is able to use light magic. Papek explained that in this world, if you have an aptitude for light magic, it means you're chosen by God, so the church won't leave you alone and will try to profit from exploiting their healing magic. Papek couldn't imagine the church ignoring purification magic like the one used in this toilet. Takumi then grew worried and asked, "Is it even okay to produce all these toilets and sell them?" Papek reassured him, saying there was no need to worry, as he would make sure no one knew Takumi was the one making them. Takumi felt a little calmer, but was still uneasy, especially since he was opposed to using slaves. Just then, he received a message from the guild reminding him that he needed to complete a quest within the month. With no other choice, Takumi reluctantly decided to go along with Papek's idea. Afterward, they headed to the slave traders company to buy a slave. If you come this far, please consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thank